This is a CBC podcast.
Well, PotashCorp has been getting a lot of international attention lately, but it's not just from traders and business experts. An international activist group is hoping to make a big fuss over phosphate, a resource they say PotashCorp is wrongly exporting from the Western Sahara. Jeffrey Smith is a lawyer and speaks for the group Western Sahara Resource Watch. We've reached him in Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning, Sheila. Nice to be on the program.
Well, thank you for joining us. And can you outline your group's concerns?
It's really that's a great question to start with. It's really a simple matter. Western Sahara, a territory on the northwest coast of Africa, on the Atlantic seaboard of that continent, has been illegally occupied since 1975. International law is clear that until its people, the Saharan people, undergo their legitimately entitled self-determination, that their natural resources aren't to be taken away from their territory.
And where does PotashCorp come into this?
Potash is one of the many purchasers of what we call phosphate mineral rock. That's different than a potash product that we find in such abundance in Saskatchewan. Phosphate rock is an important constituent of commercial fertilizer, and over the years, Potash Corporation has purchased from the occupying authorities in Western Sahara about 500,000 tons of the product, and it primarily goes to a fertilizer plant in Louisiana.
And how does that affect the people who live there?
It doesn't do anything for the native population or the Saharan population, which is divided, some of whom live inside the occupied territory, and it does nothing for the other half of the population, which has been displaced into refugee camps just inside Algeria since early 1976.
And your group has been raising these concerns with PotashCorp?
Yes, we've written on a couple of occasions over the years to call on PotashCorp not to trade in, not to purchase an illegally removed product. I should emphasize here that Potash Corporation is simply a buyer, that it's not active in the occupied territory. It's not active within Western Sahara. Rather, what it does is it charters ships to have the product loaded and in effect, brought to it here in North America.
What responses have you had over the years from PotashCorp?
Nothing. Potash is on record as saying it's written back to the Western Sahara Resources Watch group, but we haven't received anything. The result of that is that we've written to BHP Billiton Limited, the company, one of the companies, or the company proposing to take over Potash Corporation, alerting it to the issue and calling for restraint on its part if it's successful in its takeover bid.
And have you had any response there?
Our letters very early on. We're not expecting anything for a few days. We just wrote, in fact, over the weekend.
When you say illegally making these purchases and removing this resource, you're saying that's not in dispute, that status?
That's right, and there's several aspects of the whole affair. Let me begin by saying that Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara is contrary to international law, and that's the legal rules that have developed over the law of self-determination. Canadians last saw this in the case of East Timor, which after many years became a successful case, and in a different vein, we're seeing it currently in the case of Kosovo, which has seceded from Serbia. And again, I emphasize that's a different case. So there's an illegal and ongoing occupation. And within that, there's the sale or the illegal export, again, by the occupying power, by Morocco, of natural resources from the territory. Here, phosphate, the fisheries is also a significant concern. It is less clear, the illegalities, and I need to emphasize it's not illegal as a matter of Canadian law for Potash Corporation to purchase this product. So those illegalities are less clear in the case of a company which is seeking to export from the territory.
So if it's not illegal according to Canadian law, then what can you tell us about the status of what PotashCorp is doing?
We can certainly say that it's immoral, that it perpetuates an occupation which does several things. It legitimizes an illegal occupation, which the Security Council and the UN General Assembly has been concerned about for 35 years. And secondly, it denies the legitimate inhabitants of their right to the fruits, to the benefits, or the revenue, if you will, from a natural resource product. That is probably civilly actionable. It's probably the taking, the export of the resource is likely actionable as a civil matter, as a civil claim, but less so criminally here in Canada.
But no one's made that civil claim, have they?
No, that's correct. Difficult to pursue from such a distance from Western Sahara here to Canada.
What do you read into the fact that you never did get a response from PotashCorp in the times that you've raised this?
It's been our experience that companies which find it profitable to trade in high-quality phosphate mineral rock would prefer not to engage the issue. They would prefer not to deal with civil society or to be accountable outside of a very strict domestic legal regime.
So given that, what makes you think that BHP might respond differently should they eventually take over PotashCorp?
I suspect it's likely only public attention. It's shareholder attention partly, and it may be regulatory authority attention. Here in Canada, if there are hearings over under the Canada Investment Act to a significant purchase of Potash Corporation, then the issue would come up there. Essentially, it's moral suasion, which directs people, both officials in a company and shareholders, to consider the ethical nature of their actions.
And when you look at BHP's record in the human rights area, what would you expect from BHP given their track record? BHP
has been responsive over the years. We have not dealt with BHP Billiton. This particular group, which I'm counsel to, hasn't dealt with BHP Billiton directly, and less so on the issue of human rights. Mining, it's easy to level charges of human rights irregularities or unethical conduct against mining companies. By definition, their business can be disruptive of land use or traditional land rights. We would anticipate that BHP Billiton would give the matter a fair look and would also conclude that there's profitable phosphate rock to be had in other less conflictual, more legal locations.
What do you think of adding a political and a human rights dimension to what's already a pretty hot, evolving business story? Now's the time from it, and I speak, I suppose, as a lawyer more than someone concerned with the morality of what's going on with the continuing problem in Western Sahara. Now's the time to raise it within a business context. Frequently, a good ethical approach, including having regard for issues of international law, which normally we shrug off and leave to our governments, leave to the states concerned. In fact, can be good for business. BHP Billiton, I would suggest, does not want to purchase Potash Corporation with this sort of an ethical black mark over it. All right. Thanks for joining us this morning. A real pleasure. Thanks, Sheila. Jeffrey Smith is a lawyer who speaks for the Western Sahara Research Watch. We reached him in Ottawa. Your thoughts, 1-800-661-7540 or Morning Edition at cbc.ca. You can also post your comments on my Facebook page, 24 minutes past 7.
For more on all of our CBC podcasts, head to cbc.ca/podcasting.